start by saying that it's a terrific time to be an entrepreneur. I've been one for 30 years. You can tell by the black lines under my eyes and the exhaustion. And there's never been, in those 3 decades, there's never been a time like now in terms of there being capital available. So I think this is a really, really great sort of rise that's happened since 2012 since the Job Act came. So what I want to do, I know I did see the chapter, that a lot of people read the chapter yet on crowdfunding. He sent it to me. I don't know if y'all have gone through it yet. It's very short, just a few words. Yes, no, you have read it, haven't read it? Okay. No, yes, okay. It's variety. I don't want to totally repeat stuff you've already heard, but essentially there's a bunch of different kinds of crowdfunding, right? There's the kind y'all have already mentioned, which is Kickstarter, Indiegogo, which is the reward-based crowdfunding. And I'll break that down a little bit. There's also lending platforms. A lot of people don't think about crowdfunding a loan or a debt. It's particularly good if you need a piece of equipment. You're a bakery and you need an oven or something. You don't need to crowdfund your oven. You can just go get a loan for that oven and pay it back. So you don't have to worry about giving up a piece of your business if you're crowdfunding on the investment side. And then, of course, there's my favorite, which is the Jobs Act. If you haven't read that chapter in your book yet, you will. It'll touch on it. That's really what exploded this whole industry in 2012 when Obama signed the Jobs Act. It took 2 or 3 years to roll it out after he signed it. There's several provisions that didn't get rolled out until 2015. We'll touch on that as the investment side. So on the reward-based system, the two, of course, the gold standards you've heard about, right, are Kickstarter and Indiegogo. A lot of people sort of go, oh, I don't care about the reward-based now. There's investments. I want to do that sort of crowdfunding. But if you look at these numbers, $3.5 billion has been raised on Kickstarter alone. And that's not an insignificant amount of capital going to companies. That's funded. Forget Indiegogo. This is just Kickstarter. It's funded almost 140,000 projects. So it's a tremendous ecosystem there. There's 14 million backers that have gone on that platform to support these projects. I'll go in a little bit later into how that money breaks down. How many have hit $1 million and things like that, so you can get an idea of where your luck might be. But it is obviously a very, very strong ecosystem. Despite the Jobs Act and the investment style coming later, it's still a very, very good choice for people. So the lending platforms, as I mentioned, there are ones that are specific to business, On Deck Capital, Funding Circle. There are ones that are specifically for business loans. But a lot of people, when they're starting a company, can't qualify for that, right? Because you have to have some sort of revenue, some sort of history as a business to get the online funding for the loan. Some people do go to, I don't necessarily recommend it, I'll let it be known since the video's on, but Prosper Lending Club, you can go on and get a personal loan, $10,000, $15,000, up to about $35,000 or $40,000. So if you desperately need that camera for your media company or whatever, you could go on and potentially get a personal loan for that. If you don't have the time and community to build a Kickstarter. Or you need to do some things for a Kickstarter. You need to hire a good video or do some marketing. You could also hit the lending. My personal favorite is the Jobs Act and the various investment channels that have come with that. So again, I don't have much detail to go into because you have this in your book, but there's Reg D 506C, there's regulation crowdfunding, and Reg A, for the most part. The Reg D 506C, oops, look at that. I don't know my technology, I hit the thing. The 560C, you've probably heard of the 506B, that's what everyone's been raising under, right? That's how a lot of private companies raise money. The problem with B is you couldn't publicly solicit. So you wanted to raise money, but you couldn't tell people you're raising money. It was really against the law to go out there and publicly solicit for capital for your business. With C, it's a new version of the rule that allows you to publicly solicit. You can put a sign on the side of the bus, you can put an ad in the paper, you can talk about it on social media. The disadvantage is, although you can promote, you can't actually take money from anyone who's not accredited, who's not a wealthy, sophisticated investor. So you can let the world know you're raising, which is still good, because you can reach people that you normally may not have been able to reach if you didn't have a pre-existing relationship. But you can't take money from anyone who's like your friends and family and people who aren't accredited. Regulation crowdfunding is a new type of crowdfunding where you can raise up to $1 million anywhere in the country. It's not a state rule. There is an interstate exemption that I actually helped get passed for the state of Florida. You can raise $1 million just from Floridians, and that's sort of a subgroup here. But most importantly is this, you can raise on a national basis with regulation crowdfunding. That allows you to go on to a portal, like a Kickstarter, but for investment, and you can raise up to $1 million. Regulation A plus is my personal favorite because you can raise up to $50 million from the public. It's much more comprehensive, much more, more strong regulatory framework, I'd say. You have to register with the Securities and Exchange Commission. You're technically a publicly reporting company. I only bring it up to keep it on your horizons for later. You don't have to raise 50, you can raise 5 million or 10 million. But to me, that's the probably most innovative part of the Jobs Act. If you really get into business and you want to learn more about financing, particularly the chemistry guy in the back, if he's doing something that is going to take tens of millions of dollars, Reg A is a very, very cool path for that. I just used it actually to create and engineer a proprietary financial product that I'm promoting to my own company. So you can use it in different ways. I used it to create a debt product. So the more you find out about it, you can do some interesting things with it. It's not just equity. All right, so I broke those down on the previous slide into what channels there are, but they're really, each channel is better for one type of funding and one type of project over another. On Kickstarter and Indiegogo, really these 4 areas are pretty much the most popular categories. So design, meaning a cool product, or even furniture. I mean, it could be anything. It doesn't have to be a tech design product. It could just be a cool wallet or a cool backpack. You've seen some of those things being promoted. Anything technology related, any app, any new heated razor blade or whatever. It could be any kind of hardware technology. Gaming obviously is self-explanatory and very popular on Kickstarter, and it's still pretty much a good place to go for film and media projects as well. So those are some of the top 4 categories of success on Kickstarter. Marketplace lending, as I mentioned earlier, that's really more of a personal loan, but it does, as you grow, you may want to tap into lending to grow your business. And it covers anything from real estate, which is a couple people here mentioned that, to consumer, buying inventory, buying equipment. Like I said, you may be a bakery, needing an oven for your business or what have you. You can consider lending and not have to worry about that cap table that Tim talked about earlier. You're not complicating things, you're just getting a loan for your business. Jobs Act, the nice thing about it is, you have your angels and you have your venture capitals, as you guys were looking at earlier. But there's a lot of difficulty with smaller companies, what we call sort of the mom and pop, right? The brick and mortar stores. Maybe it's a fitness store, maybe it's something else. A lot of them have trouble with online funding. It's not a Kickstarter type project or even a big VC type project. You don't get the outsized returns of your mom and pop ice cream shop. But regulation crowdfunding allows those companies really to have access to capital. A restaurant could crowdfund. Regulation crowdfunding has been very successful for breweries. Opening a cool little beer brewery. So it finally, there really is this path finally for sort of small companies that aren't expecting to scale and have a 10 times return for their investor, but they can still run their business and give their clients and their smaller investors a good return. So it's nice to have sort of a path that they can use because they're not going to, sort of a lifestyle business is not going to interest a venture capitalist. So just to give you an idea of the deal sizes on these different platforms, so it's kind of depressing when you see these really successful Kickstarter campaigns that really the average is still about $10,000 raised on these Kickstarter projects. 15% hit $20,000 to $100,000, so that's a pretty nice chunk of change if you're just starting out. Only 4% of campaigns hit $100,000 or more, and then my favorite number is 275 campaigns have hit $1 million or more. So, I mean, it is possible. You just, it's just has to be done right. You need a lot of components to be successful on these platforms. But I just wanted to have a little reality check, because a lot of people get excited about crowdfunding. They see someone raising $10 million. I mean, Pebble Watch, right, years ago, raised $10 million, and they're, oh, I'm going to go out there and raise millions of dollars. Well, the average is really just 10,000. So, just plan accordingly and try to raise as little as you can, make your goal as little as you can, and still be within the funding you need. Don't get too crazy. Marketplace lending, I mentioned earlier, for personal loans, if you need that, $10,000 to start your business, buy your camera, get that first piece of equipment. They'll loan you up to $35,000 on those platforms. Unsecured loan, it's really just going on your credit at that point. They're basing their decision on your credit rating. They're not going to actually put any collateral. But they have term loans and lines of credit up to $500,000 on the business-related platforms. So on Funding Circle, on Debt Capital, the platforms that are made specifically to support businesses. Obviously, they have a higher amount you can lend. So I mentioned these earlier, the Jobs Act, regulations $1 million and under, regulation up, A+ is up to $50 million, and of course Reg D, 506B or C is no limit, and that's the one that's pretty much most popular.
So Sally,
Yeah.
when you're doing marketplace lending, and say you go for a term loan or a personal unsecured loan, you apply for it.
Yep.
The crowd then comes in and says, I'll take a piece or I'll take all of it. And you get your money and then you register, I'm assuming, your bank account or something, and you authorize payments back up to the crowdfunding platform that then pays your lenders?
Correct. So what
it's
happens?
It's not a direct one-to-one relationship.
Correct.
It goes through the platform.
Correct. And actually, it used to be a lot more cool. It used to be, when Prosper and Lending Club started, it used to be a one-to-one. It literally, you may have heard the term peer lending, which peer, or P2P means peer-to-peer. When they first started, literally, you could go on and hear a story. It would say, here's Sally's story. She needs $5,000 to buy her car, or what have you. And then I'd go, well, she's a good credit rating, she's a good story. I'm gonna give her $50. And someone else would say, oh, yeah, Sally needs that car. I'll give her $100. So it literally was a group of people, the real crowd, supporting these loans. Now what happens? They don't really make it that public. But what happens on Prosper Lending Club, and they have billions of dollars have gone through these sites. They've obviously matured now. What they do is you apply for the loan. They work with a company called WebBank. WebBank actually front loads that loan and pays you the money, and then they break up your loan into little increments of $25, and people can go on and buy those notes. They go through the whole S1 registration with the government. They individually, those notes are registered in $25 increments, and you guys can go on now. You can go on and make a 5, 6, 7% return. Go on and go, I'm gonna buy this $25 note or this $25 note. You can go on and buy the pieces of these notes, of these loans. You don't see who loans them anymore. There's no story. It's not story driven like it used to be, but they'll do it on credit rating. They'll say there's an A credit rating or B credit rating. I think it's A to F. Pretty much imagine what the A stands for and the F stands for. But you can go on and go, I want to back an A loan and make 6 or 7% of my money and spend $50, buy two $25 notes. So the crowd component is still there, but it's sort of in the background. They just front load you the money. You pay one person, and then the platform breaks up the loans into these pieces for other people to buy in. And then is there any questions on that? Did that answer your question?
That's great.
Yeah.
That helps.
Yes, for me it's so hard because I live and breathe this industry, so I don't sometimes there may be questions y'all have, just jump in because I mean I've been clear. And then of course, as I mentioned, the Jobs Act is my favorite. Something you all should really spend some time looking at. Yeah.
How long does that return for the loans usually take?
Meaning how long to get approved or how long to pay it back?
Pay it back.
3 years or 5 years. You can pay it back earlier than that, but they're 3-year loans or 5-year loans. So you have some time. All right, so those are the deal sizes.
And there's nothing to stop you from setting up a strategy to use multiple sources. You could do rewards, you could get a loan.
Correct.
And then you could maybe later go for
You're describing my ecosystem right here, Tim.
All right, I'll be quiet.
No, but it's exactly, this is my favorite slide, 'cause this is exactly what you're saying. And of course, your point is you could do it simultaneously, which you could too. I sort of do it in phases. What I love about my industry, about crowdfunding, is you can go from an idea on a napkin all the way to a $50 million public company through all these non-traditional avenues. You no longer have to find a venture capitalist or even a bank. You literally can do this whole system from launching on a napkin to going public within this crowdfinance ecosystem. So, you get your seed capital, right, from reward crowdfunding. Your idea in a napkin. You're out there getting your supporters to back you to start that first project. As you saw, you could raise millions or you could raise $10,000. So it really depends, how prepared you are to run that campaign. Once you have that seed capital, you're starting to go and you need a piece of equipment for your company. Then you can go to the marketplace loans. You go, okay, I'm going to go on there and buy my piece of equipment. Obviously, if it's a small piece, you can do personal loan. If you need a $150,000 loan for your business because you have some revenue, you can go on Funding Circle or on Deck or others and get your equipment loan. And then that helps you grow more, and then you're ready to do some more equity raise. Maybe it's a Series A, Series B, and you can go on, WeFund or Start Engine or some other platform and raise equity. And then beyond that, you've got your Reg A offering up to $50 million to go public. And you can, I call it rinse and repeat, because you can do that, as often as you want to go through that painful process. But I do love that you can start and grow a business in this whole ecosystem, and you can just throw out all the other stuff out the window, with the traditional models. The other thing I like about crowdfunding, other than what I've already said about not being beholden to tradition, and really the gatekeepers, the bankers and whatnot, is that I look at crowdfunding as more than capital. It's a way to grow a crowd for your business, your early evangelists, people who back your projects become advocates for your company. So they're out there marketing, hey, I just backed this cool, new camera or this new real estate company. They get excited about it, they become your engine of marketing. It also gives you a real strong sense of the market if you're early in testing. They always say the sort of the lean startup theory, right? Go out in the market and test your product. I don't know if you've ever heard of something called One Spark. It used to be called the World's Crowdfunding Festival. You've heard of that? I went there a couple years. I mean, they had 200,000 people. This is a huge festival in Jacksonville. It's a great place for you guys to go and test your business. You get all kinds of feedback. Bless you. The neat thing is, when you crowdfund, whether it's live at a place like OneSpark, where you're getting community feedback right then and there, or whether you're doing crowdfunding, your people can interact with you. They can comment. There was a company called Olive. They were a big media company, and I interviewed them. I did an article for Entrepreneur Magazine. I do some writing for them, and we had a cover story of the top 100 crowdfunding projects of all time, and then I had to go interview these companies. And I said to Olive, they raised a couple $1 million, I think, on Kickstarter. And I said, was this your first time raising? They said, oh no, we're venture funded. We got 5 million, 10 million, whatever it was, in venture capital. I said, well, then why are you crowdfunding? They said, we wanted the feedback on our product from our users. We don't sell directly to users, we sell to distributors. We had no way of knowing what features were needed, what they wanted. So crowdfunding was their way to get product input to improve their product. So it's not just about the money. You have all these other, sort of positive benefits from going to the crowd. Of course, media buzz. A lot of people do it just for the buzz. They not even need the money. They just, they want to have they have a very successful campaign. They get a lot of PR, and obviously brings more. Think of Shark Tank, right? People go on that. Very few people who go on Shark Tank really need that money. They do it for the incredible media exposure. Same thing with crowdfunding. If you have a wildly successful campaign, you get a lot of attention. I've also talked to people for the potential partners and distributors. I've talked to crowdfunders who haven't necessarily even been successful in their campaign, but they didn't see it as a failure because they got people approaching them for distributing their product. And they might say, yeah, I really like the product. They don't care if the campaign was successful. They want to be the first in to get distribution rights to that product. Because in many cases, these products aren't in need of the money to complete. I think it's 70% of all hardware products on Kickstarter are already funded fully and venture-backed in a lot of cases before they even launch their campaign. So that's the other problem. Don't get depressed when you see people kicking out these great projects. They're making millions of dollars on their hardware campaigns. A lot of those really successful ones are already venture-backed, and they have the big marketing machines behind them. But again, it's a great place to find partners. You get sometimes distributors for your product, even if your campaign is not successful. I'm sure Tim has talked about that, reducing the risk for investors. It's really great if you can say to an angel investor or a Series A investor, you probably wouldn't be talking to Series A if you're still testing, but it sort of de-risks the project for an investor. If you could say, I ran a Kickstarter, I raised $100,000, we got 12,000 people who have already pre-ordered our product, that's a much better story than coming with your idea on a napkin and say, hey, we back me, that's a really great idea. So I just love that.
And then what can that do for the valuation for the entrepreneur?
Exactly. Yep. That's a big issue. That's a big issue. And speaking of valuation, the nice thing about reward-based is you don't have to have a valuation, and you don't have to give up any equity in your products. You just race from the crowd. It's a pre-order. It's really a pre-order model. They're paying you in advance to get that product, and then you're pooling that money and going to manufacture. There's also one further advantage now that I'm in the investment side of crowdfunding. It's very nice on the reward base, you don't have any promotional restrictions. You know, with equity crowdfunding, you have to be very careful. Reg A, you've got to be careful. You can't overstate things. On Reg A, it's, you know, you're really under the Securities and Exchange Commission rules, and you can't make sweeping statements, oh, we have the best new real estate project ever, or product ever, because that's sort of hyping the stock, and you get in trouble for that. So there's a lot more to be careful of when you get on the investment side of crowdfunding. Rewards based, you can say anything you want, and it's not an investment pitch, so you're good. A few more slides here. So how do you make it successful once you learn about all these platforms? These are some of the things I think are key. You already know there's multiple platforms. You have to select the right strategy and the right platform. Do you want a rewards-based campaign? Do you want an equity-based? Do you want to do a lending approach? And then, of course, there's different platforms. So you saw earlier in the slides, Kickstarter is good for design, it's good for technology, it's good for film, it's good for gaming. Indiegogo is more community-based. If you have there's more like events and things that are also funded on Indiegogo, not so much Kickstarter. Kickstarter skews male in terms of the backers, Indiegogo skews females. So if you have a makeup product, I heard, fashion and makeup, that would do much better in my estimation on Indiegogo than it would on Kickstarter. So these are the sorts of things you have to think about in advance. You need to review the projects that are similar to yours on the top 2 or 3 platforms, and sort of see where you might fit best. Because if you've got a great product but you're on the wrong platform, you've already failed right out of the gate. Really important professional presentation. Early on, when I started crowdfunding, Kickstarter only had a few hundred projects, and it was just out of the gate. And you could throw anything up there, and be successful. Now, people are spending $20,000 on the videos. It's really, the level has really gone up. So it's not to say you have to spend $20,000 on a video, but you have to be very professional in your presentation. You can still shoot it on your iPhone, but we want to make sure you can see it properly, it's well lit, you can hear. I can't tell you the videos I've seen where they shoot it next to a busy road, and you're like, what did I say? So you just want to make sure people can hear you, it's well lit, they can see you, and that you're in the environment that makes sense. If you are doing a fashion product, be in around some fabrics and looking like you're, working on design. Don't do it in your kitchen. So just, things that are pretty common sense about how to make a good presentation. Graphics are important, nice visual presentation. I'm sure you can see all this when you go to the platform. So just, look through some successful projects and see what you think, has made those successful, really. The story is important. I have another slide on that, but I really believe the story is what drives all of this, all the really the meat and the heart of the campaign. Really important to have this base of customers. A lot of people believe that crowdfunding, I'll just put my project up there. It's such a cool project. People are going to rush to support this, and that doesn't happen. Very, 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 very rarely. It really is said that you should bring the first 30% of the supporters to your project. So whether that's your own friends and family that, and you can sort of build that community, or if you already have customers or people interested in your product, you want to really calculate your goal based on the fact that you have to bring at least 20 or 30% of that money through your own network. If you don't have a network, you've got to build that in advance. I've had a lot of people when I used to crowdfund consult, they call me and say, okay, I'm going to start my project, in a couple weeks, going to hire you. And I'm like, all right, well, do you have a marketing plan? Well, no. Have you shot your video? Well, no. So they think they're launching in a week or two. They've done no pre-marketing. They haven't, really prepared the campaign for success. Sort of a redundant, but marketing. Same thing what I'm saying. It's definitely not a post it, forget it, campaign. This is for the equity crowdfunding. All the other points are really for any type of crowdfunding, but this is going to be for equity crowdfunding. You have to have a value proposition. You have to have some kind of traction. You usually do reward-based first before you go to an equity site, because on equity site, they're going to want to know, they're investing money at this point. They want to know what the return is, what kind of, and by the way, traction, I've seen some equity campaigns, it's not always revenue. It could be users, it could be relationships you have. Maybe it's like you're with a celebrity and they're going to promote you in some way. But you have to have something of that. You can't just go on equity and say, I've got a great idea, back my project with $100. This is most important. Platforms are marketing and administrative tools. They're not pools of investors. Every single platform out there will tell you, particularly equity platforms, will tell you, oh, we're going to market for you, pay our fees, join our community. We'll get you in front of our 47,000 investors, and that never happens. So some of them, if you have a really interesting project, they will take warrants in your project or options in your project, and they'll do some extra promotion for you. But 99% of the time, again, it's going to be up to you to get the word out and get the ball rolling. And that's kind of a bummer for people because they think, oh, there's a big community out there, I'll just post my project. But you can do it. If you get some offline interest first before you go online. But that's very, very important. I think a lot of people get disappointed. There's only a 35% success rate in crowdfunding. So, and a lot of that, I think, 65% failure is because no one pre-markets, they don't think about the crowd, they don't get press involved, they don't reach out and get blogs interested, they don't drive the traffic. Without any of that, you're not going to have a successful campaign. So I said earlier, I said that story, I think, is at the heart of all successful crowdfunding campaigns. This, to me, is really key. The pictures here represent what I say here about the connection. So I don't know if you've ever seen this, but this guy was raising money in New York, and he had his sign, he has bucket, and his sign said, "I'm blind, please help me," right? People were just walking by, they didn't care, they weren't putting money in. Someone came along, turned the sign around, and instead wrote, "It's a beautiful day and I can't see it." People started throwing money at him, like, oh my God, I feel so bad for this guy, he's beautiful, he can't see it. It's the same guy, same mission, but he had a different story, different message, which is, something, it says, please help me, please help me, I'm blind. It doesn't affect your heart as well as, it's a beautiful day, I can't see what you're enjoying, I can't see what you're seeing. So it's just a matter of just thinking about how to craft your story in a way that touches people, that motivates them to give and support your project. Very, very true. Only if they understand your mission and what you're trying to do will they care, and only if they care will they actually reach into their pocket and give you money. Just a couple more, I think there's one or two more slides. So this is my fun fact slide. After years in the business, we've determined these three things, that Tuesdays are the best day to launch a campaign. Very practical. I don't know why that is. I guess because Mondays people are busy at work and don't look at crowdfunding. And as you get towards the end of the week, you think about having fun and vacations. And Tuesdays are just more successful in terms of the number of support. The first 3 days are the most important. All these platforms have algorithms. And so if they see a lot of activity on your project, it'll be popped up on their trending page. It'll be pushed to the front pages of their platforms. So aside from you having to get the momentum going and interest your backers and interest your media and things, it's really important for the platform itself. So what people tend to do is they'll pre-market their campaign. So before launch day, they might spend a couple weeks sending the preview of their campaign to all their friends and family and saying, hey, I'm launching this on February 1st. Here's what I'm doing. They get feedback from them. What do you think of the story? Do you understand what it's about? And you sort of engage people in giving you feedback on your preview. And then you say, okay, on February 1st, I'm going to resend you the live link, and I'd love for you to back me on that day. So you try to get all that momentum in advance. And then once you launch, if you send that out to 20, 30, 40, 50 people, and they all come within that first 24 hours, 48 hours, and back your campaign, that gives you the boost out of the gate. It gets these algorithms going to push you to trending on the home pages. It gets you, popped up when media people come looking on what projects are most active. So you can just get a lot more attention in those first 3 days. And as I already mentioned, you need a good 20, 30% from your own network. I mean, when you think about it, it makes sense. I mean, no one's going to back a project that has zero support. If I go on Kickstarter or Indiegogo and I'm going to just fund this project, and then I go, oh, what other projects are on here? You look to cross-pollinate. I'm not going to back a project that has zero support. If that entrepreneur, if their own friends and family aren't going to support their campaign, then why would I ever support them as a stranger? So you have to just put yourself in the shoes of a backer. What would you like to see before you back a stranger's project? You want to see some momentum, some support from their own network. This is my encouragement slide. This guy raised $55,000. For those of you who didn't have a business yet, this guy raised $55,000 to make potato salad. So, if he can do it, you guys absolutely can do it. He started with just a $10 goal. I don't know if that was on, I guess it's cut off now, but he started with a 10, oh, here it is, yeah, pledge $10. He just as a joke, he said, I want to raise $10 on Kickstarter to make potato salad. I just want to learn how to make potato salad. You never know, somehow the media picked it up, it got crazy. That's why you just never know on Kickstarter what's going to work. And he ended up kind of panicking because now he had to make, 700 gallons of, potato salad to fulfill 6,911 people backed his project. So he had to fulfill those supporters. But I mean, $55,000. So you absolutely never know. But do keep in mind, when I see this, it reminds me that when you're crowdfunding, you've got to remember that you also have to fulfill, right, those backers. So you can be wildly successful, and it could also be a nightmare if you're not ready. I mean, you have to think about things like all the fulfillment. Where am I going to store my product? Is it going to be on my dining room table and all over my living room couch? I mean, you have to think in advance, plan for success. What happens if I sell 6,911, of my product? Where is that going to be stored? How are you going to ship it? Do you have friends lined up, who can help you get everything packaged up? Who's going to thank all those people? You've got to thank everyone who supports you. You've got to thank them right away. Thank them publicly on Facebook. It's also a way of reminding people your campaign's still active. Who's going to communicate with 6,911 people to thank them for their support? So you really want to plan for success and make sure you have a support sort of team in place should your campaign be wildly successful. Because that would be terrible to be crazy successful and then not be able to fulfill and not have the support, and then you get all the bad press and reverses, your momentum. That's it. This is me. My new company's Worthy, not Peer Backers. So if you need me, I'm Sally at Peer Backers. If you have any questions, but if anyone has me now, I'll certainly take them. But I just wanted y'all to have an email in case you get into your campaigns or build your businesses and need some insight. I didn't want to take up too much time, so I didn't know.
We got plenty of time. So
Okay. I could sing, dance. I could.
No, I'm sure you're gonna get lots of questions.
All right. Yeah.
Would you actually mind going back to, I believe it was one of the beginning slides that had the marketplace along with lending sites as well as with their average?
Wait, that was probably that one.
Yep.
That one, yeah. Yeah, I mean, Lending Club and Pressword, I mean, $33 billion has gone through Lending Club. I mean, these platforms have really matured. It's not just a crazy, choice anymore.
Actually, I think it was one that had the average.
That might be later. That one. That
Yes.
one. Yeah. And also, some of you I heard have service-related businesses, and those are tougher. I mean, reward-based crowdfunding is very, very. It really aligns much more with the product, right? This sort of a pre-sale model where you're, pre-selling the product, getting that money in advance, and manufacturing. Works very well for that. It's a little harder for a service company to crowdfund. You put $20,000 and you raise $19,000, you don't get a penny of that. So on Indiegogo, they have flexible funding, and they have a choice, but most people on Indiegogo do flexible funding. So you can put a goal, if you don't reach it, you still get what you raise. That can bring up complications. If you don't raise what you need, if you set a goal of $20,000, you've got to buy an oven for your bakery, and you raise $18,000, and you get all that money, but you need 20 to buy the oven. I mean, you can't buy half an oven, you can't buy part of an oven. So that's one reason they do this fixed funding, because if you need what you need in order to execute, that's why they say, all right, if you don't reach your goal, we're sending all the money back to people. Because you have to fulfill. So if you only raise half of what you need and you still have to fulfill your backers, it can run into some financial issues for you. So that's something to decide between flex funding and fixed funding. Is can you still execute if you don't raise what you need? If not, then you might want to do fixed funding. There's a benefit to fixed funding as well, because people tend to come back and give more if they see you're just shy. If I'm trying to raise $20,000, I'm at $18,500. And they know I get nothing if I don't hit that other $1,500. You can sort of hit everyone up again and go, I need $1,500 more. Please give me another $50 or whatever. And people are more apt to go, oh, I don't want to lose all that money, so they're apt to come back and sort of double up on their donation, to make sure that you reach the goal. So these are just things to think about. I mean, there's the goal setting, the story, the profession. I mean, probably 4 or 5 things here. The story has to be strong. You have to have a professional presentation for your video. Goal setting is really important, because if it's too high, people don't think you're going to reach it, and they just go, okay, I'm not even going to give, because they're never going to reach that goal. To me, that's the most important. The one I usually have on here is that, you ever see the ice, what do you call the ice chest? With the coolest cooler, the coolest cooler. I don't know if you saw that one. They raised $13 million. They failed first. I don't know if you ever saw their failed campaign. So they set a goal of like, I don't know what it was, let's say $250,000 or something. And they were shy of that, and so they failed. And let's say they got 100, I think they got 125,000 or something, let's say of the 200. I'm making these numbers up, but it was a little bit gap. So let's say they put 250, they raised 125, so they failed, they didn't get a penny. They regrouped, they flipped their goal because they knew they raised 125, they made that their goal, and that's why they were able to shoot past it to 13 million, because they quickly hit the 125, and then, oh, they're 100% funded, and people get excited, and the press picked them up, and they went on to 13 million, and they didn't change that much. One of the things they changed is they launched their ice chest in December, when people aren't thinking it's a beach product. All their video was them pulling their ice chest through the beach and the big wheels, and you could blend your drinks in it. I mean, it's a pretty awesome thing. I made all my friends buy it. But they tried to sell originally in December. When it's winter, people aren't thinking beach. So sometimes it's just something that simple. Is your product matching when you're launching? And then, of course, the goal setting, I think, on there is off. But they didn't change that much, and they came back. So the nice thing about crowdfunding is you can fail, and it doesn't mean you're not going to be ultimately successful. Sometimes it's better to fail because you have all these backers who then can launch the same day when you relaunch your campaign. And so if you collect backers over a 30-day campaign, and then you don't meet your goal, you could relaunch with all those backers and say come in the first 24 or 48 hours, and then you just totally skyrocket. You have all these people who come in that first time period, and you get the momentum, you get the trending on the front pages of the platforms. So nice thing about crowdfunding, you can fail still and still have a good future.
Is there such things as too low of a goal?
There is too low of a goal if it's totally unrealistic, unless you give it context. Like if you say, I'm raising $1 million, but I need this 100, to pay for, our first prototype or something. Like if you give a reason why it's only going to cost $50,000 or $100,000 when it's clear that what you're building is going to take so much more, as long as you give context, you can keep it low. But sometimes you just roll your eyes and go, then put a $10,000 goal, and you're doing this, huge project that is much more expensive. So a lot of people will just sort of dismiss those. They know they're doing it for press or just doing it just to, get some extra cash. But I think most important is setting a goal that you can fulfill your obligations to the backers. If you sell not necessarily potato salad, but if you sell 6,000 units of this really cool thing you designed, you have to have enough money to know you can produce it, you can package it, you can ship it. People forget about shipping even. Say, oh, I can make this thing for $10. I'll do it for $10. Well, then you forget you have to package, you got to ship, you got to get helpers to do that. Sometimes you need to do it abroad. You got to pay for import. You just have to make sure you do all your numbers ahead of time and sort of back into your goal. Don't just go up and raise 50 grand. Really start thinking about every aspect of execution on the project.
So let's just say.
Sorry, you guys were next.
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
okay.
It was all at the same time, but
let's just say I wanted to throw an event and I were to put up something on Indiegogo and I wanted to raise $50,000. I reached my goal. Now, what debt would I be into all those backers? I'd have to put the event on.
Correct.
Now they get tickets now. They attend the event. What if they're not, in the state? What if they're not local? Do I have to apply for that?
Yeah, you'd have to make very clear. If you put on an event and you're raising for an event, you have to be very clear in your reward structure. Because that's a whole other class, literally, on setting your, picking your rewards, setting the pricing for your rewards. But you have to make it very clear it doesn't include. Like I mentioned, I helped this guy raise 200 grand for his new Buyer Hunt website. One of his VIP awards was coming to his launch party in Arizona. I said, be very clear that travel not included. I mean, you can come to his house and be part of the party, part of the band or whatever, but yeah, just in your reward, you're saying, travel not included. So if it's an event, you say travel to event not included, but includes tickets or maybe VIP t-shirt or VIP tour, whatever your reward is going to be. You have to just be very clear that it's what it doesn't include. Yeah. You guys had.
What kind of success rate do you see for social entrepreneurs on crowdfunding, like ones who are starting a for-profit business, but with the intention of helping alleviate some social problem, but don't really offer any kind of reward or much of anything?
Yeah. Well, you still can't. I mean, social entrepreneurs are very good for crowdfunding because the crowd likes the idea, likes the mission behind it. There are actually a lot of like you could do Generosity, which is the nonprofit arm of Indiegogo. So all their tools are very good, and that's a very well established and visited site. But you don't always not have to have a reward. I mean, it's up to you, because I always say make the rewards things that obviously don't cost too much out of pocket. So I was helping a coffee company a long time ago raise money, and I said, make a, I'll name a drink after you. I'll do a barista for a day, where you can just come in and be a barista for the day. You don't have to give them Howie's coffee, So I always encourage people to really start to earn a lot of money. Think of rewards that aren't going to take a lot of time or money out of your pocket. So you can always think of some kind of, maybe it's a VIP party, like I gave an example with the real estate. It doesn't have to be a tangible product that you're going to go out of pocket for. When I actually crowdfunded, I used to have my own platform called Peer Backers before. It was right when Indiegogo and Kickstarter were launching. So for 4 years, I ran a platform, helped thousands of entrepreneurs raise money for their campaigns. And when I actually crowdfunded to raise money for launching Peer Backers. And I just went, who do I have? Who do I know who are friends that have products? And one of my best friends is a best-selling children's author. I said, hey, Deborah, give me some books at your price, So I just, it doesn't have to be something you create. If you're a social entrepreneur and you're not making a product, you can think of rewards that will get people excited, be buzzworthy, but it may not be something you actually make. So, I just got my friends to donate things. My mom's a great cook. I said, okay, buy Bobby's baked goods or whatever, There was an airline, People's Express, that was relaunching, and they were hiring me to raise money for their new airline. And I said, make a reward, the CEO will come pack your suitcase at a $5,000 level or whatever. The CEO of People Express will come back and pack your bags. Because you can limit the reward. So we can say the top 15 people or 20 people could make this. Because you can limit the reward levels so you're not giving out too much. But in that case, it was very buzzworthy. It's another good thing to get press. If you can say, hey, the CEO's going to come pack my suitcase, it also something the press may pick up on. So just think of those. You don't always want to dump rewards and say on social, we're a nonprofit or something, you don't need a reward. But they do work in your favor to get press, to get buzz. And also it's easier to, I find personally, it's easier to ask someone to back you and support you if you're giving something in exchange. If you're just saying throw money at me, it's one thing. You say, hey, if you donate, come to my party, or if you donate, you'll get this, children's book for your daughter or whatever. I just find it's easier to ask if you're giving something out. I don't know if that answers your question, but, and I talk a lot, so just say like, yeah, I understand. Yeah.
So if you're taking pre-sales, what is an acceptable time period for a release date, or when does it become unacceptable?
Yeah, that's a big issue. It really probably depends on how big your mission is. I mean, if you're building an electric airplane, they're going to understand it's going to take a while. But I mean, most people are good with 3 or 4 months, and then it starts to get. I think people are less concerned about how long it's going to take as they are about how when you say if you're going to deliver. If you understand what I mean, like if you run a campaign and say, all right, 3 months I'm going to deliver your, because on the reward it'll say expected delivery. So if you run, if it's January and you say expected delivery May 1, then they're okay. All right, I'll wait that time. But if you say expected delivery May 1 and you don't deliver until September or August, that's when people get mad. Is when it goes on month after month and you don't hear from the founder. You don't, they're not communicating. Communication is really important. The backers are a lot more understanding if you communicate. Oh, our factory had a problem, and so we're going to be delayed a month. Or as long as you communicate and let them know you're really working it, you haven't forgotten about them, they're a little more understanding. So I think the number one thing is just at least being as clear as you can and right as you can be about that time frame. I think they're patient, and that I mean, obviously I don't think you want to wait a year, but 3 to 6 months is okay. But as long as you're communicating and they know you're working towards the goal, they're usually pretty patient. Yeah. You're next one. Yeah.
You raised it.
Oh, raise hand first. You're my peripheral vision.
What are some regulations on the rewards? Because say you're asking each person to donate $1,000, but only give them a sticker.
Right.
Is that legal or?
Yeah, it's legal. Yeah, wouldn't be the approach I would recommend.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard his question, but it was like, what can you do for rewards? Can you ask for $1,000 but give them a sticker? Is that legal? It's legal, but as I said, I wouldn't recommend it. The things with rewards, you want to be as fair as possible. You really want to give people a deal. I mean, the problem with, for instance, apps on Kickstarter is they may say, back me for $25 and you'll be the first one to get this app. well, you know, if they say it's gonna be a free app, why am I paying $25 now? You know, when it's gonna be free, you know, when you're done. So then you feel kind of cheated, you go, I'm not sure I wanna back that. So, that's just an example, but, so I always suggest that you make, you know, you give them a real discount. You know, if you say this is gonna retail at $100, don't charge your backers $125 to get in now, you know, charge $50, you know. You've probably seen it, they have an early bird. I mean, how it often works with these platforms is they'll have an early bird to get people encouraged to back you as quickly as possible. So we'll say retails for $100, then the reward will be early bird, $50, you know. Then it'll be, or super early bird, $50, and early bird, $75, and then regular, $85, you know. So you still get a deal at $85, is not $100, but the super early birds or early birds is just a strategy to get people quickly to back the project, get the momentum going, so people don't wait. Because a lot of times people, you know, they'll see your project, oh yeah, I really want that thing, I'll go back in 20 days, you know, they have to still have a few more weeks and I'll get it. But they don't want to miss out if they see that there's only a limited number of super early bird or early bird pricing. So that's one thing, is that you just want to price it right. You really do want to give people a deal and a discount. You don't want to, you know, you don't want to pay more to get in now to support you in the early stages. But you do bring up a regulatory issue, which is a lot of times, not a lot of times, sometimes you probably read that people will really be fraudulent. I mean, it's I think it's only been caught maybe 3 or 4 times, which is amazing with 139,000 projects on Kickstarter. But some people will raise money and use it for something other than what they said they would use it for. And a couple people have sued, and one under the, is it FDA or FT, whatever, the Fair Trade, FTA, Fair Trade, something, I don't know. It's one of these, yeah, consumer protection agencies. And so they'll say, hey, you misrepresented. So you can't lie, you can't misrepresent. You could have crazy pricing on your reward and you know, just make people mad. But it's not, the only thing that's illegal is if you represent you're using it for a project and the project fails and you use it for your project, that's not an issue. People expect that. But if you said you're raising $20,000 to make something and instead you go to Hawaii, you know, they're going to have an issue.
I was wondering if you should have a patent on, or like a patent your process or your product before you start crowdfunding.
Yeah.
Like, what other, like, what should you do that, and what other risks like that should we be like aware of?
Yeah, there's 2 things with that, because a lot of people go, oh, I don't want to crowdfund because I'll buy a deal and get out there. And you know, Tim and others probably know that execution is everything, not the idea. So you have to at some point share this with the world and get support and get money. You can't just hold your idea and go, it's going to be really valuable someday and never share it, never raise money for it. But what we recommend usually is at least a provisional patent. I mean, at least start the process. It's very inexpensive. And, you know, and it gives you some feeling of security. I'm not a patent attorney, so you know, I won't go farther than that. But we do see that that's one approach people are taking is a provisional patent. I think it's like $100 or something. It's not expensive.
Right, and the thing that supports that now is the change in patent laws first to file. So just get your provisional out there, and you're the first to file. Then you can determine whether you want to prosecute it later.
Right.
So that's a great question.
Yeah, and that's an issue. I mean, one reason a lot of people don't even do patents, which is why we say, yeah, at least do the provisional, is you have to defend it. I mean, it is, you know, that's the hardest part of, I think, of a sort of a hardware or a patentable product, is that even if you have a patent, someone infringes on it, you've got to pay all the legal fees to protect it and to fight it. And that's a big, I know there's a lot of trolls out there who, you know, just, that's their whole idea, is go through and try to. Exactly, the trademark, yeah. So it's you really do need legal advice when you get into that field.
So if I'm a little more than 4 months out, and I guess
From what?
from being like having a completed product,
Okay.
what would be your opinion of doing 2 rounds of funding? The first one being talking about our mission and what we're working on, and saying we need money to continue working on this product and selling like shirts and other merchandise in that round, and then doing another round for pre-sale of the product once we're closer to the release date.
And remind Sally what your business is, just so
it's a tracking device for kids with autism, designed around their sensory needs. Essentially, it's a smartwatch, but there are a handful of other features that have been added into it to make it specifically useful for that community.
Okay. By the way, I'm sure you already have these connections, but if you don't, one of my friends has an autistic son at one of the best autistic schools in like New York, and they're very well connected in that community. And the schools always, you know, they have all these autistic families, and so I think you probably already have that lead, which is why you're in this business. But if you need that, just reach out to me.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
But anyway, I guess it depends how much you need, and I mean, if you're going to be ready in 4 months, I would wait and do the prototype. But it depends if you can't get to the prototype without the money. It really depends on each situation.
That's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, it's always catch-22. It's always better to have something to show. Kickstarter, in fact, requires you to have a prototype. If you're funding, I mean, if you're raising for a product, you actually require a prototype. They didn't used to. So if you're going to go on that platform, you have to have it. Indiegogo, I don't believe has that rule anymore, or have that rule. Or what you could do is raise it on something like GoFundMe, or some more charity website, or on Generosity, and just sort of fund the idea there. And then when you have the actual product, go to the hardware aspects for the platform. But it really depends on your situation, like how much you're trying to raise and how much, and do you really need that to get to the next step, or can you sort of self-fund a prototype? It's always better to have something that they can see and get excited about.
Now, when you say prototype, so I have a prototype, however, it still has, being that it's software-based, has a handful of bugs in the system.
That doesn't matter.
No,
Doesn't matter.
so
Yeah.
even if it's not fully functioning,
Yeah.
it is a decent prototype, I can use that.
Yes, yeah. I did that with when I used an example of the heated razor. There's actually a couple I'm working with. They have the first ever heated razor blade. I mean, it's just awesome. And the first prototype had like wires sticking out. I mean, and that's what we use. I mean, now it's beautiful, and they have their chip and all that stuff, and they're So we did a crowdfunding campaign for that, and now they're probably a couple months from launching that. But we did an awesome video for that. That was fun. We had like cavemen shaving with a rock, and then we said through the ages of when something about people have been searching for the perfect shave forever. We had all these whipped cavemen, like cowboy or whatever, with all big knives, and until they found the perfect shave. Yeah, by the way, if you can do a fun video, it's helpful too, because people remember it, and it's they'll go viral. I mean.
You know what that razor is called?
Yeah, oh God, it was it's been a while. Yeah, I'll tell you. Hit me up later, I'll remember it, because I've been up since 5 in the morning and had 10 meetings, so I can't think of it right now. What is it you played?
Smart razor.
Smart razor. That's it. Yeah, smart razor. Yeah, smart razor. Yeah, because it's a chip. Anyway. Is that it, or is it okay? Yep.
How do the crowdfunding platforms themselves make money?
Oh, yeah, there's I mentioned that. It's a success fee base, so if you're not successful, they don't charge you, which is a beautiful thing. But if you're successful, they take a piece of the action. So Kickstarter takes 5% of money raised, and then Indiegogo can be, I haven't been on there recently, but they can go from like 5 to 8. I think they charge you less if it's a fixed funding, and more if it's flexible. So I think they're trying to encourage you to do fixed funding and push and be really successful. So there's also, when you keep in mind the money you're raising, you also need to keep in mind the transaction fee. So there's for the payment platform aspect. With Indiegogo and Kickstarter, they don't get that money, but PayPal and the other credit agencies and whatnot get that. So you really want to build in 8%. So it's a 5% success fee and then a 3% payment processing fee. So whatever you're raising, you want to take off at 8%. In your mind, and of course add that to your goal. And same thing on the equity side. They all have different structures, but they usually charge a posting fee. They'll charge a percentage of raise. Sometimes they'll ask for warrants if they're going to promote your project and do marketing for you. Okay, have I covered everything? Is there any other questions? Okay, you know where to find me. Tim can find me.
I have a question.
Okay, yes.
What about internet or initial coin offerings? What's your opinion of that, and how is that crowdfunding? Is it not crowdfunding?
It's definitely crowdfunding. Yeah. So a couple of the two of the top investment crowdfunding sites are WeFunder and Start Engine, and Start Engine just launched an ICO service. So Start Engine is really the top one for Reg A offerings, for equity offerings, and they're really doing ICO education. They do webinars for that, and they're doing SEC compliant ICO offerings. Yeah, I just went to a 4-hour blockchain thing on a Wall Street event last week. I'm fascinated by it. You have to be a little careful. I just went through a 9-month regulatory process with the SEC to get my bonds registered through Reg A+. And, I mean, it's scary. I mean, if you do something wrong, I mean, you could end up in jail, you know, so you really, you know, you don't, I think most people when they start at ICO, like, you're familiar with ICOs, initial coin offerings, you guys touched on that in class. The problem is people go, oh, it's a coin, it's not a security. But you would be surprised what the government decides is a security. I mean, everything to them is a security. As long as it has value and the person buying it can have an increase in value, it's a financial instrument. So they really got a lot of people in trouble. A few ICOs that went out of the gate early did not do it in a compliant manner. They thought they didn't have to comply with the SEC regulatory, Securities Act of 33, Securities Act of 34, and then they got in a lot of trouble. So I think compliant ICOs will, you know, they're going to be a smoother process. They're being run by these platforms now that know what they're doing. So I think they're worth looking at. But yeah, it's not an area I'm by any means a specialist in, but I would just always get legal advice when it comes to the investment side, because the SEC is rather a pleasant organization should you need to get too familiar with them. Yeah.
Any other questions?
What about social? Yeah, that's not good.
This is Dr. Kawanui.
Hello,
She heads the
hello, how are you?
School of Entrepreneurship.
Oh, fantastic.
This is Sally Outlaw.
An outlaw, you gotta be careful, I know.
I was at the market watch, somebody had asked me, I told them I would show up, so I snuck out.
No, no worries.
But what about social entrepreneurship? I've seen I've actually seen some people who are raising funds for a social cause.
Yeah.
So how does
Yeah.
that fit?
Well, on these platforms, I mean, there are ones that specifically focus on that. I mentioned Generosity is a nonprofit one. It's a sort of a sister company to Indiegogo, which is one of the more popular ones for reward-based crowdfunding. There's one with GoFundMe, of course, everyone has probably much heard about, and it's sort of charity-based. The funny thing is there's really nuances. So like GoFundMe is, I think of that, and most people think of that as more of a personal charity platform. I need to raise money for my medical condition, or my dog got hit by a car, or whatever. I think of GoFundMe more individual, raising for individual. For a cause, I turn people to rally.org or Generosity. There's 2 or 3 CrowdRise. CrowdRise is more of a group thing, like, you know, running a marathon or event. Like he does events. So, you know, if you're doing a nonprofit event, CrowdRise is good for that. So there are specific platforms that are better for different kinds of raising.
Yeah, and I guess what I'm thinking about is there are some businesses that are startups that have a social mission.
Sure.
But they're for profit.
Sure.
So and I have actually seen we've got a veteran who's doing a social crowdfunding.
Sure. Do you know, are they doing it on a platform?
I think that's something she's just started, so I'm not as familiar with what she's doing. She's supposed to be here tonight, but she had another issue or something.
Well, the only reason I ask is sometimes a lot of people can do crowdfunding even without a platform, and particularly if it's not investment-based. If it's investment-based, you have to be on a platform, because those are all regulated. But if you're raising for a business and it's not for an investment, you're just doing it for reward-based, or, you know, or it's a pre-sale, you're giving them a product, or it's just donation. So there's, you know, donation and reward, you don't get the financial return. You know, then you don't even have to do that on an actual platform. But you know, I think there's a big. I told him earlier that if you have a story behind it, you're much more likely to be successful. So a social-driven business, it's going to find it easier to find an audience and get support and get motivated for people to open their wallet than just a straight business, unless you really have a cool product. You know, if I make this really cool thing, I don't care about your mission. I want this thing. And each of those have different audiences. A cool thing does well on Kickstarter. A mission-driven business does better on Indiegogo, or Refunder, or other, you know, because some of these investment sites also do reward-based. So it's really about finding the right platform for the mission, but it's much more likely you're going to fund if you have a social mission behind you, because, you know, people buy into that, and you know, they just jump on board because of the story. But yeah, I think I'm just a big, you know, they call me a crowdfund junkie. I love the field. I think it works for almost everybody, really. Service businesses are I think, the hardest ones to fund, but sometimes you can find an angle that works for reward-based for those. Yep.
And then just one last comment. when it comes to social entrepreneurship, strategically, you can look at your entity structure, and you could actually set up two different entities, right? You can set up a 501c3
Sure.
as a foundation that you can take charitable donations to, and then you can have your for-profit business that might be focused on a watch for autistic children. And that charitable foundation might actually buy watches for autistic families with children that in need, while you sell those watches to
That's a
school
good example.
districts or something.
Yeah.
We
for
just had that
profit.
conversation with an accountant.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, there are some conflicts with doing that, with getting into, the same.
You have to be careful, they call it the arm's length, yeah, so you have to be a little careful.
Arm's length
Yeah.
transaction.
Oh, it's
Yeah,
not
arm's length
like
transaction.
Yeah, and we had the conversation with the
Oh, good.
But,
tax person,
Yeah.
and he was not inclined to go that direction. And the B Corp is really not, although it's called a B Corp, it's not really a different tax entity. So, but they.
by the way, Kickstarter is a B corporation, so
Yeah.
Kickstarter changed into one, they didn't start as one, but they changed into one.
Yeah, but it really doesn't change the, it's more for the reporting, it's more for disclosure statements than it is for tax consequences.
Right.
So what I understand is it really doesn't have a tax impact, but it sends a message to the investors or the people that are involved. But on the other side of the coin, you can use sponsorships and things like that, which covers donations and can take and marketing.
I see on GoFundMe, you can put like your business or entrepreneurship, which is kind of cool.
Yeah,
As the business or entrepreneur, how do you treat that income?
how do you treat it as income?
How do you treat that income? Like, what do you,
Yeah, it's just taxable income to the business, unless you're nonprofit. But by the way, I would not put a business on GoFundMe. I think it's a mismatch, and a lot of people, I don't think many are successful on there. I mean, unless it's something, I'm starting a wheelchair business or something, and it's, it's tied to some charity story or something. But I don't see a lot of successful projects that are business related on GoFundMe. But it doesn't matter what platform you're on. If you're a profit, it's taxable income. Yeah, I'm not an accountant, so I don't know what category that goes in. I think I wrote about it in my book, but that was like 5 years ago, so I forget. But if it's nonprofit, obviously, that's not an issue.
did you say generosity, you have to be a nonprofit to be on there, or just that generosity is a nonprofit itself?
Generosity is for sort of more cause-based and nonprofits, and that's an offshoot of Indiegogo. So instead, like Indiegogo used to have a pretty active community area where, events, community-driven events and nonprofits would post. So they actually broke off a separate entity called generosity.com, and that's where most of those community nonprofit projects go now.
So if
That might be good for yours.
cause-based but not a nonprofit, I can still go on there?
I would do a little deeper dive on that.
Okay.
I don't know if it's, I don't know if you have to be mission driven and you still be a profit. I'm not sure. I haven't ever used Generosity. I just use Indiegogo. I just know that that's their Generosity is spun off as a separate entity, and I know it's more community driven and mission driven. But I know a lot of nonprofits are on there. I just don't know if it's a requirement. So that's easy to find.